Awards and support her. We are excited to welcome you to the Woman of Inspiration podcast today, where we speak with women who lead, inspire, and motivate. And today I have a very special guest. She is an award recipient as a Woman of Inspiration, woman-led business owner. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to the table to meet founder and CEO of Sophie Grace, Emma May. Now, Emma, it's such a treat to have you. We've had many discussions behind the scenes, including the one in the green room just prior to coming on.
Yeah.
And I said that, I was going to give you a hard time because the bio that I had for an update is so brief that it's literally a sentence. And so Emma is the founder and CEO of the women's workwear brand, Sophie Grace. And I guess that says it all.
I kind of
Not
said,
really.
well, it's so funny, right? Because my bio, my career is so woo, like all over the place that sometimes when I try to write a bio, I'm like, oh, where do I start? Like it's just, yeah, it's a little insane. Anyway, yeah. So for background there, Monica, I was a lawyer. I started my career in law, was a lawyer for about 10 years, then went into real estate when my kids were young, founded a real estate brokerage, ended up doing a lot of volunteer community work, ended up working for the premier. We lost the election, went back to real estate, and then came up with the idea of a workwear brand that really worked for um, professional women, because I think it's an underserved market, especially mature, not, I don't want to say, yeah, mature professional women, right? Like not crop tops.
No, I think probably professional women sort of gets us into that age of like 35 when
Yeah,
you're
totally.
actually on your career path and you're, building and growing and scaling. And so I'm actually really excited because I put my Sophie Grace blazer on today, which I would love. I wore it to the Woman of Inspiration Awards because I wanted something that I could wear all day that was comfortable and that moves with me. And I have to say, like, for those of you that can't see this video, I'm going to tell you that it's like butter. It's just like butter. It doesn't feel confining like a normal blazer or jacket
Yeah,
does,
it
right? And
really,
so even the
yeah, we
pants,
really
and
try to do.
I just love what you're doing, and I love how everything's one kind of color and it's very simple. I am a very simple girl. Like I am all black, all white. I don't really do color, but you have some great colors that I'm kind of, yay, that's exciting.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, I'm excited to have you here today. And you do have an incredible story. And I think what's so important and what I really want to share with our listeners today is, shining the spotlight that you can pivot, you can turn, and it's never too late to rebuild or start or try something new. And you've just got an incredible journey. So I'd really love to start back when Emma was 11. Like what did Emma want to be when she was 11 years old?
Oh man. Um, I think earliest career path I thought about was like art history. I think I wanted to be like an art history prof. I think that was sort of the first thing. I think I remember being, it was either like being an author, like a writer maybe, or art history prof. I was really into the creative arts, right? Like I was really into that world. And then over time, um, then I thought about journalism for a long time. I remember being in university though, and it's funny, like it's funny how people say things that can change the course of your trajectory. And I remember being at some party and some guy was like, "Yeah, you don't have a face for TV." Um, and it like sat with like I was like, "Oh, okay." And I like took him at face value, which is fucking insane, right?
Okay, Emma, we had a brief pause, and this is just what happens. And, I just wanted to hear about what some advice that you were given was. And I couldn't hear it on my end. And if I couldn't hear it, I'm sure that our listeners couldn't hear it. So we paused and we did a little audio tune. So, Emma,
Yeah.
what
Uh,
was that information?
well, it was terrible information. So this, yeah. So I remember being at a party in university when I was like 19, 20, and this guy said, "Oh, you don't have a face for TV." and I'd wanted to be a journalist, and um, I took it in, right? Like I allowed it to sort of seep into my psyche about who I was and about how I looked and about whether or not that was, and it, it ate at me. And it's just and so I finally ignored, I didn't ignore it. I allowed it to sort of govern actually a decision process. And in the end, I ended up going to, I made the choice to go to law school. That was a familiar choice for me because my mother was a lawyer, right? So it was this known thing. And it was something where, it sort of it tied into creative storytelling. It tied into reading. It tied into like I crushed the LSAT, right? Like that's my skill set is like taking in volumes of information and then like distilling it down to sort of this, what the sort of core issues are. Like I'm very good at that. And that's actually what I've managed to do over the course of my career now, not necessarily in the application of it to law, but it's still really that sort of primary, I would say like one of my primary strengths. Um, yeah, so I ended up going to law school, and I don't think I ever really thought that I wanted to practice law, but I did for a period of time, right? And I and I wasn't really happy with it, and I never really quite got into the groove of it. I found the best job I had in law was actually at a film company, and I was probably doing more business development and management of like contracts and doing things like we'd be doing like a film finance project. And so there's like 10 lawyers on the file and completion bonders and financiers. And a big part of my job was just being the hub, right? Of like bringing people together and making sure that we were all sort of on the same page, wanting to get stuff done, right? So I found that I wasn't necessarily practicing as much law. I mean, and that's kind of funny because I qualified for the bar in BC. I qualified for the bar in Alberta when I was pregnant with my daughter when I was 28. And then after I practiced for a bit, the law side of Alberta came back and was like, "Oh, you haven't really been practicing law. You've been doing more business." And so I had to re-qualify. So I've actually written the bar exam 3 times and passed every time, I will say this, right? But yeah, I've been a bit through the ringer on that one. So yeah. Yeah, so that was kind of the early start to my career. It wasn't, it wasn't ideal. I never felt like I quite got it. I never felt like I got it right at that time, right? I had kids my daughter at 28, so I was like a second year lawyer. I had my son when I was 31. Um, and my husband at the time was a corporate finance lawyer, so he was working crazy hours. And I was that mom trying to do the juggle, right? Like trying to keep shit on the rails and try to build my career and try to figure out what it was that I wanted and how was it that I was going to be the mom that I wanted to be at the same time as having a career that I felt was fulfilling. And those two things really, I never found a way at the time when the kids were young to make them compatible. I really didn't.
You didn't feel
No, I never
yeah.
got, I never
That
got,
that was the longest pause, Emma.
sorry, that's okay. It's
I was
okay.
I was waiting for I was hanging on your words.
Yeah, sorry.
I was waiting for it. But it
Mhm.
was and I was waiting for it because I think that we have all been there, Emma, where we are doesn't really where we know our potential is better served somewhere else.
Yeah,
And there's that, and it's like the longest pause ever because the only person that can actually make that change or make that decision is us. And if we don't, we can go and do same old, but if it doesn't light your fire, like we're only here on the planet for such a short period of time. Like, what the hell are we doing? Like, we have
yeah,
to make it worthwhile and we have to take those risks and get it done. And, when I look at your career path, your mom's a lawyer, so she must have been like immensely proud of you for, following in her footsteps. So how did she sort of, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but like how did she take the news when you said, I think I'm going to try something else?
Actually, not well. Um, no, actually at all. Uh, Law really defined my mom, and it was her thing, right? Like she came to it later in life. She went back to law school when she was 35 and we were young kids, and she was a litigator, right? Which is
Mm.
um and she was really good at it. Like she was called the piranha or the barracuda or something. Anyway, I feel like she was really good. She took on major files. Um, she would be up till like 3 a.m. preparing for these massive trials, and she crushed, right? And
Mm.
she was unbelievably good at what she did. And I never had that passion in that space. I never had it. Uh and I quit to go into real estate. And that was actually really devastating to her. She was like, "Why would you do this? Like, you are a professional woman. There is no barrier to entry in real estate. There's lots of people who are like really scummy in that business. This is like demeaning. This is not, a path worthy of you." It was actually kind of, you know, the message. And so that was actually really hard because I felt in some ways I took that in. But I also knew at the time that it was actually a good fit for me. And it was a good fit for me at that time in my life because I had young kids. I wanted to have more flexibility in my career. I wasn't tied to the billable hour. I certainly didn't have the same passion that she had. And this was actually for me about community and building community. Like at the time I was like on the PTA, I was that mom, right? Like I was really heavily invested in my community and my kids' community. And so it felt like a natural fit for me to then go into residential real estate where I would help people find their place within our
Mhm.
community, right? And I was still able to use my legal skills because I, was working in contract law. And there was also like a level of sort of formality and trust that I think I brought to my practice there that other
Mhm.
people weren't bringing. And so I really believe that, you know, we place these, society places these sort of labels on certain roles as being like, higher, I don't know, value or something like that, right? Like you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you're a this, you're that, right? And really it's about, are you doing the best you can do at what you do? And,
Mhm.
you know, striving to be really excellent at the project that you have in front of you in the moment that you have in front of us is probably the most high value thing you can do, right? Regardless of what that is, whether it's like picking up garbage, like, are you doing it in a way that is, that brings integrity to the role, right? And I think
Mhm.
that's an integrity to yourself. And I think that was for me, that was sort of this learning process there, was it didn't matter what my mother thought of the job or what others thought of the job. It was, how do I do the job as best that I can and
Mhm.
really bring all of the values that I hold in that to that. And that's actually what led me to founding a brokerage, was because I felt like sometimes I was at places that didn't necessarily fit the philosophy that was bringing to my business, right? And so I thought, well, I'd really like to found something here. I'd really like to work at a place that valued both great design and great marketing and beautiful
Mhm.
tools, because I was working in a relatively high end industry, like part of town, right? So I was selling expensive projects and houses, and I felt like there was a missing element of like really great marketing design in that space. And I was like, why are people's signs so fucking hideous? Like, let's do this really well. Sorry, I mean, I was like,
That's
I
okay.
always
Beep,
had this
beep,
like
beep.
aesthetic thing, right? Like, I always was like,
That means that we're human, we're not robots. And
yeah, yeah. Excuse me. I'm recovering from a cough. So I really wanted to bring that element of things to something. And then I also wanted to have like a level of professionalism because I found that, you know, this is real estate transactions are often the most significant business transaction a lot of people make in their life, right? Like these are often, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars, multi-million dollar transactions. And the idea that you're engaging with someone who isn't treating this in a professional manner was like offensive to me. And so I wanted my clients to think of us, uh, the company that I started, Charles Real Estate, and our team as, you know, as they would think of their doctor, or they would think of their financial advisor, or they would think of their lawyer as a professional in the space who's there to not tag them for a commission, but to give them incredible advice and to help them navigate the process of finding a place to live, doing the best deal that they can, um, selling a property at it within a market for the best price that you can get, right? And doing that with a level of integrity that really um, would elevate things so that people would come back to you. Like what I wanted was to have a career in that space where you didn't really advertise. It was just people came to you by referral because of you'd done a really good job on the last file that you did. And I think that was my philosophy with that was if you do a really good job on the project in front of you, you will get the next project. You will get the next job. It will come.
and and that is absolutely the truth, in everything. And I think you probably brought to the industry, um, a set of principles and, professionalism that maybe, I mean, there's a saying that, the tide, what is it? The small ships raise all boats, or
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I think
Yeah.
that's what you did for the entire industry by actually saying, no, I see an opportunity here and let me contribute in a way that's meaningful to me.
Yeah.
And, like your period of time that you were in the industry was probably very well received because you raised it for all of them as a professional, safeguard for probably one of the most important decisions that families make,
Yeah.
in one of their investments. So I think that's really fantastic. I do want to talk about the next transition, which is your current transition, uh,
Right.
from real estate. So from law to real estate. And I imagine, you had that community, you that flexibility that you had with your children during that time. But when did you get that other poke that said, I'm on to the next? I have something more that I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I ended up working in uh, government for a period of time because I took on a volunteer project around a flood, and then the former Premier Jim Prentice hired me to be executive director of his office in Calgary. So and that was this really incredible role. I was kind of, I guess, a gatekeeper, like chief of staff type person, where I ended up being able to see how community worked and how businesses and nonprofit and government all sort of came together to form this what we know of as our community, and that the integration of all of those pieces is really key and important. Um, but uh, anyway, we lost an election, so I ended up not having that job, and I was interested in real estate, but I'd also, I'd been in that job and I ended up having to go to a board meeting one day after. And I was standing in my closet and I was like, why don't I have like a ivory blouse and a matching pencil skirt? And if I want to wear the blazer, I can, but I don't really need to. And I was like, why is there not like, and I just felt like my wardrobe was full of these like pieces that didn't work together. And whereas my husband's wardrobe at the time was like, these suits that all sort of just were like lock and load, super easy for him to get ready for like a very professional meeting in the morning. And I was like, how do I make this actually a lot easier for women? And for professional women? And how do I do something where it's like the blazer goes with the pant, that goes with the skirt, that goes with the blouse, and you can just like pop it all on. It's super simple and you don't have to think about it. And there's no executive decision fatigue. And and I kind of thought, oh, this is an underserved market. Like, and I reflected back on my time in law and then when I was in government and thinking about my peers and about, what they wore to work or how often they'd say to me, because I was sort of a fashion girly always, they'd be like, oh, I love that. How do you do this? Or I don't know how to do that. And I was like, okay, well, why don't we make this really easy for people to look really good? Like, let's
Mhm.
make it really easy for women to like show up and feel incredibly confident. And so that was sort of the beginning of how I started piecing this together, right? And came up with kind of an idea around the brand and what sort of the foundational philosophy was. And then I reached out to my half sister at the time who was working at Lululemon, and I was like, "Hey, do you know anyone who can help me with this?" She's like, "Oh, a friend of mine just left her job here because she's got two young kids and she's not, she's doing consulting work now." And so I called her. Her name was Lisa, and she'd been a senior product person at Lulu. And, I described sort of the project and I hired her. So I would do things like I'd sell a house and then I'd take the money and I'd pay for fabric and for pattern making. And I'd work with Lisa on sort of some of our initial designs. So we came up with sort of 12 pieces. Yeah, actually, I remember the first time we actually hired a designer and the first round came back to us and it was a fucking disaster. Like everything, yeah, it was. And it wasn't that and actually what happened with that was each individual piece was really beautiful. But each individual piece had all these extra things, right? Like, so like the skirt had ruching and the blouse had this and that. And so when you put it together, it was all just too much, right? Like it was like too. And I'm like, well, this is the antithesis of what we're going for. So Lisa and I stepped back and what we did was we like stripped everything down. We were like, what is the essence of that perfect pencil skirt, right? That you have? What is the essence of that really simple blazer that you're going to have? What is the essence of these things? And then if we do them in fabrics that coordinate and colors and simplicity and make them fit really beautifully and feel great, um, then when you pull it all together, it's very clean and very simple and works with lots of different bodies. And so that's really kind of how like that first run came about, right? And it was, and of course, then that first run landed 32 boxes on my doorstep 2 weeks before COVID hit.
Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah. And so no one needed workwear, which was scary, right? And that was kind of the beginning of being in a business where it was like, yeah, you've taken out a line of credit, you've got all this product, you need to sell it, you need to find your customer. And at the time, I was like, oh, marketing, I'll just figure it out. Like, no clue, right? Like, there's all these things. When I started, I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, if you'd actually told me, like, how much I didn't know that I was like, I'll just figure it out. Like we figured it out, all right. Like we figured it out, but holy, it's been a ride, right? Like it's been a real ride of making a lot of mistakes and then pivoting and fixing the mistake and um listening to our customer. And then, I think foundationally what's really held true for us is that I am obsessed with our customer, right?
Mhm.
Like I am obsessed with her. I want to know what drives her, what makes her worry, what's her morning look like, how does our product fit in her day, how do we make it work better for her, how do we give her things that she didn't know she needed but now she has and they just like totally transform the way she gets ready to go to a conference, let's say, right?
That's me, girl. That's
Yeah,
me. Like
Yeah.
I am jetting off very soon here to Las Vegas for a conference. And I know what I'm taking. Like I don't even have to think about it. I'm like, that's gonna be comfortable. This is gonna look good. And then I can just like change out my, accessories.
Yeah.
And so that is the beauty of it. And, I have to, there's a couple things that I want to mention because we have listeners that are business owners, that we have business owners from all levels. We have leaders within organizations at all levels. And so, what I love about your authenticity telling this journey is number one, as all entrepreneurs, that bootstrap, and Lord, I know this personally more than you can know, is that you have to generate revenue and then you've got to put it back into the business. And I really want to spend some time there acknowledging how courageous that is and that you have to really believe in your vision in order to make that happen because you take on such a big risk um, to the unknown, but you have to believe in yourself so strongly in order to get to that point. And I really just, on the brink of International Women's Day and International Women's Month, of course, we celebrate women all the time, but I just want to say congratulations, Emma, because your career path and the decisions that you've made have been very intentional, very strategic, but they've also come with risk that
Hmm.
you've embraced. And, I think that's really admirable. Like, I think we need to go, yay, Emma, because that gives other women that empowerment to know that they can do it too. Right. But you have to believe in yourself and all of those lessons that you've learned, even the social media piece. My God, we can talk about lessons all day
Yeah.
long, but if you did not know every part of your business, do you think that you can be crushing it like you are right now?
No, I mean, and when I say know every part of my business too, right? Like there are, I would say that most Zoom calls I get on, I know less than most people on that call, right? Like, and I don't mean that in a trying to diminish myself. I mean, I surround myself with people who know what they're doing, and I get my ego out of the way. And I'm like, this person is really incredible at product, and this is the vision that I have, and this is how this person's going to help me bring that to life. And you know what? I don't know how to build a financial model, and I don't didn't know how to run a 13-week cash flow plan. And so I have people who help me build that, and I now understand it.
Mhm.
They don't let me change the cells in the model, which is fine. That's great.
Down those locks celled.
Yeah. So, my job is to keep everything on the rails, keep the money coming in, find incredible people, empower them to bring their best to me, right? And to bring the best, you know, options and information to me so that I can then make decisions that move the ball up the field, right? And it's not about me knowing everything. It's about me sourcing the people who do and then being able to like pull those pieces out as I need to so that they fit within, what I need to get done and then building it to the next phase. And actually as the business gets more and more complex, like it's funny because like you know, at the beginning, like I would load the product onto the website and I could do the, shop. I could do all of that stuff. I mean, I can still kind of log into like Facebook and run the ads. I can still do, there's elements of it where I need to know things. But then the other day something happened. I was like, oh my God, like Shopify's updated so much since I last logged in here and we launched our new ochre color. And for whatever reason, like the pre-order app wasn't working properly and everything was marked as sold out. And we sent an email to like 60,000 people and everyone's like,
Oh,
why is it sold out already? And I was like,
it was on purpose, creating demand.
yeah, yeah. It's like 7 a.m. and I'm like, oh my God, how do we fix this? Right? People are emailing me, this is great, but why can't I buy it? I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. So, a team member, Sophia, was actually relatively new, but she's so skilled and she was able to like jump in and like fix the problem. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Right. So as it goes on, like I know the details become less and less that I
Less and
can actually
less.
do, right? But my job is to just, yeah, stay true to that vision, stay obsessed with the customer. I believe, I think if I lose sight of my customer and who she is and what she wants, that's where things really go south, right? And so I need to be um really dialed into her, and then things come together. And I think it's that passion for her and her, and she is my friends, right? Like she's the women I went to law school with. She's the women I articled with. Like there was actually, it was really funny. Somebody ordered the other day, and like we actually articled together, and I hadn't seen her in like years and years and years. And I was kind of like, oh my God, like she's a big partner at a firm in Vancouver,
Yeah.
huge litigator, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like she is wearing my stuff to court now. Like that's cool,
That's
and
very cool.
yeah,
So cool. I love
yeah,
it.
and it made me feel like I'm bringing value to
Mhm.
her life, right? And that yeah, it's a good like that's a good thing, and it fills the bucket, right? That I can make people feel good and so that they can go out and do their thing.
And bringing that vision to life, there's nothing more exciting than bringing that vision to life.
Yeah.
Like being able to say, okay, this is why I created it. And then actually now seeing the women that you created it for actually now wearing it is super incredible. And so for those listening, I mean, we're going to send all links and they're going to know exactly how to find out more about purchasing. But what I can say, and I'm going to just prop you up a little bit more, like I love every single piece because I remember being in that fitting room. I thought I was going to be in there real, like in and out. And I was in there probably for an hour, wasn't I? I think I was
Yeah.
doing selfies in the mirror. I was just
Yeah.
like, "Ooh, this is badass," right? I mean, even with my plain styles, like I was just like I was feeling really comfortable. I felt badass. And yeah, so props to you on everything that you're doing. I do want to cut to some other things about you and kind of like what makes you so successful. And I want to talk about some of those routines and some of those can't live withouts or some of the best words of advice that you've ever received. So we're going to do like kind of rapid fire quick responses on those ones.
Okay.
So I guess we'll start with that one. What is some of the best advice that you ever received, Emma?
I remember actually it was when I was practicing law, and it was a woman who said, my boss, Michelle at the time, and she looked at me and said, just because you're good at something doesn't mean you need to do it. Um, and that sort of opened this door to, right, maybe I can try something else that doesn't, and that I can learn and that I can grow, and that if I really want to do something different, I can, obviously I think you're in your best place when you're doing things that fit with you. But, like I was good at trade law. That's come in handy a bit now, but I was, like I didn't want to be a trade lawyer.
So success, covered that. You're uber successful. What about getting unstuck? Because I know that, through all of these things that you've done, it's not all been a smooth road. So, how does Emma overcome the bumps in the road or the obstacles, or you come like it's a daily occurrence on, I mean, your first one was COVID, right? When the shipment arrives to your door, but
Yeah, yeah,
how
we've had a
how do
lot.
you attack or move through barriers or challenges?
I think, and I think this was something that I talked about when we did the award in New York, is trusting that I've gotten through something in the past. And so I think as we get older, obviously this becomes easier but I do believe that if you do not push yourself and you do not challenge yourself and you do not make yourself painfully uncomfortable, that you won't be able to get to that next level, right? And learn about yourself and grow and change and do the next thing. And so, um, and it's taken me. I guess, I mean, I've done these things throughout the course of my life, and I have made myself painfully uncomfortable. And sometimes it didn't work out. And sometimes the the discomfort was awful, and I've made shitty mistakes. Um, but I also know that without doing that, I wouldn't have had the confidence or the ability to say, okay, I'm going to do this thing and it's a risk and it's scary and it could like go to shit. But I'll figure my way through it. I'll find a way through it, and it's going to be uncomfortable. And I mean, like right now, like I, I got divorced last year and my kids are grown. We're expanding the business into the US. And so I got in the car January 2nd and I drove down to LA. And it has not been easy, right? Like I have a nice house, I have a nice life. I'm, you know, finding my way around like Airbnbs in, you know, LA, trying to figure out like what part of the city isn't full of homeless people. And not to but like I don't need to go outside the door and deal with that. In this moment, it's not safe, right? uh so uh and there's a part of me that was like, "Oh, maybe I just quit and go home."
Never,
I'm gonna
never.
figure
I
this
will be
out,
packing
right?
up my
Yeah,
car
I know. And
and
so,
joining
and I
you
was like,
and saying,
no.
not
I was like, no. I decided to come for 3 months to figure out the lay of the land and to build relationships here and to, really get a better understanding of who our American customer is. And so I'm gonna keep going, and I'm on my third Airbnb. I was dealing with like the fires, stuff didn't work out. Like it was just been, I have to say, like it's not been smooth sailing, and it's scary, right? It's like I have some friends here. I don't have a ton of friends here, and my dog. But I've also started to meet people, and I've also started to build some really great relationships. And I've also started to pull together deals that actually are going to expand the brand, right? And so there's a side of it that feels, like for 20 days of shit, sorry, I swear a lot. There's been, some really bright lights. And then I remember, you know what? That's cool. Okay, what's the next, like, what's the next thing? And how do I challenge myself and get through that next thing? And you know, we're not here for a long time. Like,
absolutely.
make it like it is scary. It's all scary. Things can go wrong if you try or don't try. So you might
Yep.
as well try.
Yep.
And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm like, for a long time, I was mom, and I was um committed to my kids, and I was committed to, doing that the way I wanted to do it. And now I have the opportunity, I'm 53, to try to do it a bit differently. And so I'm trying to do it a bit differently, and we'll see. Yeah, like I'm trying to build a new thing, and we'll see how that goes, right? And I may decide that actually I need to do something different, right? Or that,
No, you can't.
or that I got what I needed from it, right? And this is
Yeah.
the other thing too, right? Like I do think there's a bit of my ADHD that comes into this, which is I will also try things and then sometimes let them go. And sometimes that's okay because I got what I needed from it, right? And so there's also this like I need to push and get myself through things and endure the pain. But then at a certain point too, there's also a point of like saying, yeah, and I got what I needed from that, and now it's time to move on to the next thing, right? Or the
Mhm.
next challenge, or you know what, we've tried that, isn't going to work in the way that I wanted it to, so we're going to do a different approach, right? So it's all a bit of a learning curve, right? And I just keep trying.
And I am here to support you in any way that I possibly can because I see the vision and I know it's strength it takes and the courage that it takes to step out into the uncomfortable, but I absolutely love that feeling because I know that with that feeling comes an immense journey of growth and opportunity that you would never have if you do not go out into the unknown. You will never know. Like I am obsessed. Like I don't use that term very often, but I am obsessed with being uncomfortable when it relates to that period of growth, because that is exactly where it happens. So, I know this word obsessed, it's like so overused in
Oh,
the influencer world, like, oh, I'm obsessed over this sweater. No, I'm obsessed over that period of being uncomfortable, because that is exactly where the magic happens. And so I'm here for you, girl, is what I want to say. And love the fact that you are, entrenched and doing your thing and in LA. And I see so much opportunity. And, I'm down for helping you and supporting you. And I hope that you'll come up and join me in Vegas.
I know, right? Thanks,
I
Monica.
think you should just hop in your car, bring Frank, and meet me in Vegas.
Yeah,
I'm actually forgetting that we have a podcast right now. We're getting off topic here. So I'm going to pull it back for the listeners. And, I just want to talk about a couple more things here because we don't have very much time left. But Emma, you're a beautiful woman. You take care of yourself. You're 53. I'm 54. Whatever worked then may not work now. I mean, what do you have, or what's your ride and die for your health care, for your self-care routine?
walking.
Walking. Oh my God, I love walking every
Yeah,
day.
and you know that oh, at least like an hour or 2 a day, like, at least. The dog helps with that because he kind of requires it. I'll put on electronic dance music,
Mhm.
EDM, and just bop my way along. I found as I got older, I couldn't do as much of the sort of intense cardio as I wanted to do, so, um, I try to lift weights, do yoga, and walk. I walk a lot, and walking is it's I guess it's sort of like that walking meditation. It's where I do my best
Mm,
thinking. It's where I find the anxiety can let go, right? Like if I walk for
yeah,
at least an hour, I feel like by the end of it, like that things have sort of processed and released in me. So I would say that walking is the number and it's something I can do
everywhere.
everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, so we've got the self-care routine, and I'm down on that with the walking. And as we were talking before about this menopause summit, the lifting weight is really important and all that stuff. That's a whole other conversation that we'll
That's
have
a
to
whole
have, by the
other,
way.
yeah, yeah.
So why is it so important? And you've embraced stepping into the spotlight, so thank you so much. But why is it so important, Emma, for leaders and women who have paved the path with others to step into the spotlight and celebrate your own accomplishments and celebrate the success in order to celebrate the success of others? So why, I created that Woman of Inspiration Awards for a specific purpose, and it was so that women own that spotlight. So why is that important to you?
Oh, I think you're teaching me that's important to me. I'm not sure that I actually no, I'm serious, Monica, right? Like as much as I do like the social media thing and I'll do this stuff, I've never fully been that like I'm okay with it now. Um, but I was never that comfortable with it. Like, my brother's an actor. Growing up, like, it's so funny. Like, my mom would be like, she'd, hire the magician at the party, and I'd be like, no, I don't want to, like, just let someone else be there, right? Like, I've always actually been a little more comfortable being a bit kind of quiet. Maybe like you said that to me when we started. You're like, you talk quiet. I'm like, do I? My kids say I'm loud on Zooms, but whatever. But it's been a learned um, thing, and I think people in my life like yourself who say, no, you need to celebrate that and be celebrated. Yeah, that's a new thing for me. It's definitely not been my traditional comfort zone. Sometimes I want the work to stand out for itself, but I've realized that that actually not isn't necessarily always the case, and that I have to self-advocate, and that I do have to get out there and push things, and that's been a part of that discomfort, right? Like a
Mm.
being able to be okay with that.
And I think so. Okay, there's so many women that I've talked to, and I would say probably 90% of women are in your same position where they're, but they get to a certain level of success, and it's almost like I like to reframe it is that when you have achieved success, if you aren't able to share it or provide an opportunity to celebrate you where you are, then and when you do, it gives permission to others to do the same. And so, they're like, how did she do that? And so I think that even going through this conversation that we had on this podcast today is, who is a woman of inspiration? Like, how did she achieve all of these
Yeah.
things? And, it comes down to being authentic, and it comes down to, trying different things and stepping outside of your comfort zone, but also, really just owning your worth, and not entirely being comfortable about stepping into that spotlight in order to share it all is the reality that most women face. But once you're there, it's not that bad, is it?
No. No, it's not. No.
Right? Like baby steps. Every single time is a baby step.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Emma, what is your, and I wrap up with this all the time. I would love to know your definition of a woman of inspiration.
Oh, um, I think it's someone takes who isn't perfect, but who takes risks and who tries something that's a bit out of the thing. I mean, last night I went with a friend to a comedy show at Mulholland Comedy Club, or no, at Mulholland Tennis Club. Sorry, like totally like random, weird thing. And there was a woman there who was 50, and she started doing stand-up comedy like 5 years ago, and I was like, holy shit, like you rock. And what a scary thing. Like that to me
Mhm.
is like, honestly, like that to me is like so terrifying. And here she is doing it. And I was like, that's really cool. Like she made a decision to just go for it. Right. And
Mm.
I was like, wow. Yeah. And I think it's like, especially when uh things aren't like, especially when it's something that's so out of the box or so different
Mhm.
from what you've been conditioned to believe or about yourself or to do. So watching people um push those boundaries and push themselves in a way that's a bit different is actually really cool. That's what inspires me.
And I'm inspired by the same, there's not one woman that doesn't inspire me that, probably if she's assessing herself is like, oh my God, like I am, I don't feel like I'm where I need to be right now and still on that journey. And yeah, I think that's super cool as well. And so the women who inspire us are the ones that actually go after those big dreams and they don't let anything stand in their way, which is super exciting and inspiring because that gives, you know, um, we see that in on those days that we're just like a little nervous and scared about what we're doing. That's natural. It just gives us that motivation. Just go for it. So
Yeah.
dream big. And I'm
Thanks,
excited for you
Monica.
and your journey in LA. And, I see that market as a really incredible market for your product. And I've seen a lot of stuff and I just really love the brand. I love what you stand for. Um, and I think that it was the stars have aligned for you in order to do this. And so you're where you need to be right now, Miss Emma. And how can people get a hold of you, find out where to buy your products, and learn more about it?
SophieGrace.ca.
Simple, simple. And you're on Instagram. What is your
Instagram,
Instagram handle?
MMA, because my name sounds like MMA, sounds like MMA, mixed martial arts. So it's MMA. It's ridiculous.
MMA, and then for the product, it's Sophie
Sophie
Grace.
Grace. Yeah. Shop Sophie Grace.
Shop Sophie Grace. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so that was a really awesome podcast. I actually forgot that we were doing a podcast. It was more of a conversation. So sometimes that happens. And, it was really inspiring speaking to you and learning more of your journey. We've had lots of conversations, but I would really, love for the people and the listeners that were, tuning in today to really share the story. I encourage you to step outside that comfort zone and, hey, let's nominate those women who inspire us because honestly, that's the first step is making that application and letting them know that they're seen, they're heard, and they're valued. I don't think that we do that enough. So thank you so much for being on the Woman of Inspiration podcast, Miss Emma, and
Thank
I look forward to seeing you very soon.
and have fun in Vegas.
I'll see you in Vegas.
Maybe. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.